What is betrayal trauma?
Well, how about this? Instead of a definition, let me give you a quick analogy. So, imagine you are on a bridge that's a mile above ground, and this bridge is a mile long. It's a very thin bridge. And under the bridge are active volcanoes and infernos, fires with billowing smoke and heat. And you're on that bridge and you have to get across that bridge to be safe. And you're holding, let's just say, the two things that mean the most to you. It could be your mother, it could be your child, it could be an animal. You're holding in your two hands the things that are most precious to you, and you start to walk. But as you're walking, the heat from the volcano and the fire underneath you is so immensely hot that it's burning through the soles of your sneakers. So you look down and you know, my Lord, if you fall, it is over. And so you start to walk, but you can't even see what's in front of you because the smoke is so thick. So what you do is you try to put your hand on the person in front of you to help lead the way. And the person in front of you is the person you love and trust the most. You trust them with their life more than you trust yourself. And so you got your hand on their shoulder, and they're walking, and you're holding your two most prized possessions in your hand. And out of nowhere, the bridge collapses, and you start to fall. Now you're falling. You're looking around for things to hang on to, things to grab onto, but there's nothing. And even if you did see something, you're holding two precious things in your arms. So your brain is hijacked. You look down. You're going into the eye of the volcano. And while you're falling, you look up and you see the person you loved and trusted the most has a hammer in their hand. They're the ones that made the bridge fall. Now you're thinking, what is going on? How could they do this to me? And then you fall and you die mentally and emotionally, but not physically. And that's where I come in. That's my definition. And I'm sticking to it.
I think that is beautiful because people can relate to it, right? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I look at so many different types of relationships and you always feel a sense of betrayal. And so, in the analogy that you gave and in the people that you work with, do you sometimes see that the betrayal doesn't always come from someone else, but maybe it comes from an internal, like they've betrayed themselves?
Well, here's the deal. Absolutely. And this is where we get the term betrayal blindness from, because betrayal blindness is a term that was coined in the early 90s by a woman named Jennifer Freed. And what she found was that a part of our nervous system, which is the fight, flight, freeze, all those other F's, what they do is their job is to actually calm our body and or keep us safe. So what happens is when we have a perceived threat, betrayal blindness will kick in, and we won't dig into that threat further. So let me give you an example, okay? I don't know if I gave you this last time we were talking, but imagine Little Red Riding Hood. She wants to go see her grandma, and she knows she's got to trudge through the, scary forest, but she wants to see her grandma so bad she's willing to do whatever. She's got blinders on. So she goes up to the house and she knocks on the door. But you know what? Something inside of her tells her something's off. Because usually grandma says, who is it? Nobody said anything. Something inside of her tells her something's off. Now, she might not know exactly what's off, but something's off that's telling her. But because she wants to see her grandmother so bad, she ignores those pink and red flags. So she opens up the door, she walks in, Grandma, Grandma, you home? She doesn't get an answer. Now something inside of her is even louder, but she can't pinpoint it. She just knows something's off. Now she goes to the back room and she knows this isn't her grandmother. She's like, Grandma, why do you have beady eyes, long jaws, sharp teeth? I mean, come on. What? But she doesn't run because betrayal blindness kicks in, but it's to her detriment because the wolf obviously eats her and she dies. Well, here's the deal. 9 times out of 10, you were in a relationship and there's times something feels off. We can't pinpoint it. We might not know exactly, but just something is what. But what happens is betrayal blindness kicks in. Our natural body's senses kicks in, and this is often on a subconscious level. And what we think of is, oh man, if I start asking questions about the lip gloss that I just found in the glove compartment, or the hair that I found on the seat that's not my color, I got to tell my friends that the person I was with was unfaithful. That's embarrassing. Now my kids might have to spend every other weekend with each parent, And now my finances are going to be disrupted. And again, a lot of this happens on a subconscious level. So we're like, no, no, no. And then we start excusing it away. Oh, my wife is so nice. When I saw her at Starbucks with her boss, she was probably just, giving him some tips on, whatever. Or my husband's so nice, the blonde hair in his car, he probably just gave his coworker a ride home because he's so nice. Okay, but here's the deal, what you just said, and you're correct. When the crap hits the fan and we actually now are faced with the reality, our spouse, our partner, our significant other is absolutely cheating on me, having an affair, betraying me, what have you. Now you're not only dealing with the betrayal of the person you loved and trusted the most, you're trying to do that when you don't even know who you are because you betrayed yourself for so long. So, yes, it's both, and sometimes one or the other.
Which one is more impactful, the betrayal of someone else or the betrayal of ourselves?
Well, that completely depends from person to person. How much self love do you have? How much self worth do you have? How much self reflection do you have? One of the things that I tell people all the time is, and this is my own thing, so you're not going to find this in any study just because I've been working with couples for so long. This is my own thing. When we are hit with a betrayal and it's in front of our eyes and there's no denying it, in my opinion, 40% of what we're going through in that moment is the betrayal at hand. 40% of our complete, shattered, broken, damaged, destroyed self is the destruction at hand. But in my opinion, the other 60% is what that did is it woke up the sleeping giant of your developmental wounds that were unhealed. So I think when we betray ourselves, it has longer effects and deeper roots. Because I'm telling you something, when I try to help couples, especially if they're trying to rebuild and repair and move back on together, yes, we have to spend time on you as a couple and the betrayal and the broken trust. There's no doubt. But if you don't heal your pre-existing insecurities and pre-existing wounds, then what you're going to do is imprison your partner, your spouse, your significant other for the rest of their life. And no matter what they do to build trust, it's never going to be good enough because they're fighting an invisible battle. And those are your wounds that you need to deal with.
That's what I was thinking as well. I was thinking that it was more so, and this is anecdotal because it's our experience, that it's more so the betrayal of yourself. And you raise a good point when you have unhealed trauma, unhealed experiences, maybe from your childhood, from your teenage years, and it comes up in the relationship, and you have a choice at that point, right? Like either you can face it head on and try to resolve it, or you could run, as you mentioned, right? Fight, flees, fawn, and so on. And then I wonder sometimes when people are struggling to resolve their past and it's starting to creep up in their relationship, what do you think are some of the obstacles then people face when they're looking their trauma in the face? It's impacted them and now they have to make that decision.
Well, listen, it's a very good question. It's a very complex question. And here's the reason why. There's no such thing as a one size fits all when it comes to healing or when it comes to betrayal or trauma, because depending on so many things, such as what type of environment did you have in your family of origin? What type of supports do you currently have? Do you have a faith walk or a faith journey or a faith belief? What types of resources do you have at your hand? So really it's difficult to answer that question because everybody is completely different. But I will tell you this. A lot of times what happens is when we're younger, actually, I don't even know if I'm going to answer your question, but I want to say this. When we are younger, what happens is we all take on certain characteristics to survive in our home. So, for instance, let's just say your mother's a raging alcoholic, right? Well, you're going to take on the characteristic of, you know what, if I avoid my mother, I'm not going to get beat. I'm not going to be called names. I'm not, whatever. Let's just say your mother only gives you attention if you get all A's on your report card. Well, then listen, if I please my mother, that's I'm going to be most safe in my home. If I please my mother, I'm not going to be on her crap list. I'm, whatever. So let me clean the house and get good grades and use my manners because pleasing me it keeps me safe. Well, what happens is when we have these saboteurs, and the reason I call them saboteurs is because they were survival strategies when we were younger. But if we don't heal them or address them when we get older, they start sabotaging us in relationships. Because when certain things happen in relationships and we go back to our, well, let me avoid, well, now that could be sabotaging your, or let me people please, that could be sabotaging your relationship. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of the times when we get the rug pulled out from under us, when a betrayal comes to light, one of the main things on our healing journey is learning that, man, I had no idea of my boundaries. I didn't even have boundaries. If I had boundaries, I didn't know how to enforce them. I had very little self-respect. So everybody is dealing with a tremendous, profound amount of pain on their journey. And one last thing I want to say before I'm quiet, because some people will be listening to this will saying, "Well, listen, I didn't have a lot of trauma in my childhood," and that's could be true because the Latin word for trauma is wound. So let's just say people don't have like big T trauma; they have wounds. We still had our safety characteristics that we needed when we were young, that needed to protect us, that now go against us in our adulthood. I don't even think I answered your question, but I just went on a rave. So please feel free to ask it again.
No, no, you did because it allowed me to think about, let's say, like about my childhood and I had to create safeguards because of what I was observing in the
Yeah,
household, right? And then I realized that some of those safeguards weren't safeguards as I became an adult,
yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
then I wonder sometimes, how can we then identify what we need from our childhood in our adulthood if sometimes it could be beneficial, sometimes it can't be?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, if you are happy with who you are, then maybe you don't need many changes. But I always say, especially if I'm like coaching, doing some premarital coaching to a couple, I'll say, listen, both of you came from an origin of your own communication styles. Like, for instance, listen, when you go to a family reunion, you can look at your family, make certain facial gestures, certain facial expressions, breathe a certain way, and your family just knows what's up. Where I wouldn't know that. But so when two people come together, they come from they're almost speaking two different languages, even if they speak the same, language. And so when you get together now with your partner, your significant other, you have to uh, work on effective communication to see now what's going, and then create your own language now for your new family. And this is a line. This takes work because um, everybody comes with their own baggage, with their own expectations, with their own pet peeves, with their own this. I was working with a family one time, and the wife, her came from a family where when somebody was trying to give you a bull crap, she would just go, and that annoyed her fiance like to no end. And it was a big joke in her family of origin, but it was a huge area of contention, with him. And I said, this is a perfect example of how you guys need to now find the communication style that's going to fit you both, whether that's negotiation, compromising on doing something, or completely eradicating that, or what have you. So to answer your question, I think first of all, the more we know, the more we grow. So everybody should be doing their own self-reflection all times of life. But when you're in a relationship, and keep in mind, I say all the time, we're not ready for a long-term relationship or a marriage when the goal is we want to find somebody to take care of us. We're ready for a long-term relationship or a marriage when we're ready to spend the rest of our lives taking care of somebody else. And then if both parties are doing that, they're tripping over each other, trying to do for each other. And then there's no room for all this outside nonsensical betrayal.
How can someone then, Jay, start that process that you just described
Of what specifically?
of identifying that they're ready to commit to someone, and as you mentioned, right, not to be taken care of, but to take care of someone else? How can they begin that process for themselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think anyone is ever truly ready. I mean, Lord have mercy. I've been married going on 25 years, and I'd like to think that I'm doing fine, great, and dandy, but there's times I feel like I'm speaking French to my partner. Um, so the one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we are far more than human beings. We're human evolvements. I say all the time, we're completely different people from year to year, from decade to decade. So not only do you have to continuously get to know who you are and who you're becoming, you also have to constantly build bridges to your spouse and get to know who they are, who they, what have you. So we fall in love with one person, but we continuously renew a love with a different person throughout the years. We have to continuously build those bridges and stuff. So it's hard to answer your question because absolutely, I think people should at I'm going to be honest with you. One of the things that I'm doing with my kids now is I'm really doing my best to teach them listening to their intuition, listening to that, inner gut. I'm trying to really help them with their own personal faith walk. And my kids are still young. Um, all the tools they're going to need to self-reflect and go grab onto a foundation when they need it. But here's the deal. Um, People have to, which is why it's a travesty, if you ask me, that people get married without any premarital coaching or counseling or whatever, because marriage is going to offer you challenges that you just don't understand. And I'm not talking about the big, huge challenges necessarily. I'm talking about the small challenges. Do you guys even know who's going to wash dishes? Do you know who's going to cook? Do you know who's going to clean? Who's going to scrub the bathroom floor? Who's going to pay what kind of bills? If like there's small things because I always say it's not the big boulders that prevent people from climbing the mountain. It's the annoying little pebbles in our shoe. Those are the ones that you want to take your shoe off and say I'm done with this damn mountain. And a lot of people want to throw in the towel with marriage not too long into it because it's those pebbles that they haven't worked out. So I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a work in progress. It's a constantly work in progress. And the biggest indicator, in my opinion, of what's going to make or break anything in this life, including relationships or repair after betrayal, is you have to come to the table with a willingness. You're not always going to know everything. You're not always going to be able to accomplish everything. You're not always going to have the tools, the resources, whatever. But if you come with a willingness, you can move mountains.
Do you think that it's hard for some people to accept that they would have to come into the situation with a willingness and they don't know everything to leave their ego at the door, so to speak?
Well, you know something? No, I don't. And you want to know what makes it hard? The day in the era in which we live in. Because think about it, everything is at our fingertips. Our listen, I'm gonna tell you, I was reading something not too long ago, and they said the average teenager watched more porn in 10 hours than our grandfathers did all of their adult life. So listen, in today's society, you want a hamburger, go through a lane, and within 2 minutes, you got a hamburger. You want a medium tall cafe loca mate senorita, you go through a line, and within 2 minutes, you get it. You want a piece of butt, download an app, and within 2 minutes, you get it. People don't want to stay in relationships anymore because there's way too much convenience in the world. There's way too many options in the world. No, people haven't done ego work, which I'm going to be honest with you. I think ego scares a lot of people. All ego means is simply our ego's job is simply just to make us feel good and look good about ourselves. And that's not a bad thing. Our ego, however, it's not a bad thing to challenge your ego either, especially if it's going to help your relationship. But I think the era in which we live makes it very difficult for people to stay committed. And now, and I don't want to offend any of your listeners, and if anybody is in these relationships, I love you just the same. But now there's a lot of people that are, in polyamorous this, and I have clients that are polyamorous. I will support them and love them the same. But there's also a big movement to, just cohabitating and not marriage. And there's also a big so society has changed tremendously, and I think that has changed the dynamics of how we deal with relationship and how we deal with self.
I agree. I remember watching an interview, Jay, with a person, this woman. She was having this conversation with her partner and things were going well. And she flat out said, it could have been a skit, but she flat out said, well, if you're not going to give me what I want, I'm going to go find someone else to do so. Just like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's called the 80-20 rule. Is we will leave the person that we're currently with that's giving us 80% of what we need to go find the 20% that we're missing. The problem is they're going to have the 20%, but then miss out on the other 80% that they need. And this is why we relationship hop.
So the grass isn't green on the other side, even though that 20% is like, oh my God, he's giving me 20%, she's giving me 20%. But they forget that the 80% isn't there.
Well, listen, you know what I tell people? The grass may very well be greener on the other side, but that's probably because it's a sewer backup. So be careful.
Yeah, there's other reasons why it's it might
Yeah.
smell bad. There's things that you don't want to see when you go below the baseline, the surface line. But I look around, and when you mention a point where society has changed, I look at my grandparents, even like I look at my parents, and I see some people because I've always been around older people, and the things that they would talk about was totally different. And yeah, you know what? This is not me getting my on my old man soapbox, right, and just preaching out to the world. But it is interesting to hear people my age speak about things that now that interested me when I was in my 20s, not in my late 30s. But I guess maybe I was so much more mature. I was like, yeah, I was thinking that way at that point in time. I'll give you an example. Like one of my an acquaintance that I know, he's working towards a relationship, and relationship fails, it fails. You know what? Things happen. It's either him or it's them, whatever the case is. And he blames everyone else but him. The city I live in, it's all gold diggers. These women are too old. They're this and that. And I asked him one time, I was like, if I would have put you and every person that complains about a relationship, right? If I would just to one day just listen to everyone, right? And put you guys in a room, you do realize you guys are talking about each other. He's like, oh no, I'm different, Jay. I'm the catch, right? It's everybody else, right? So when I hear like when you talk about like betrayal, trauma, and things like that, and people sometimes need to do the work, why do you think some people don't?
Well, listen, first of all, you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And I think a lot of the time people don't do the work because of what you just said. I don't acknowledge I'm the blame. I don't acknowledge I'm the fault. I'm not going to acknowledge I'm the one that has the issues. And, I think, listen, relationships are hard. Now, I have been out of the relationship dating pool. Like I said, I'm going on 20, actually, what is it? 24 years of marriage. So Lord knows I wouldn't want to be back in the dating pool. But I think a lot of people have a concept that's probably not healthy when it comes to, people will be like, um, I am good looking. That should carry me. I have let's let our minds wander. So I that should carry me. I go to the gym 6 days a week. That should carry me. I got a good job and some money. That should carry me. And you know something that may carry you for a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months. But substance, substance. You know something? I just did a TikTok today, and you know what I named it? I named it Morgasms, because when we are physically intimate with the person that we love, listen, who doesn't want to jump into bed with a Casanova or a blonde bombshell or whatever? I don't even know whatever people are into. Who doesn't want it? But when you want to talk about connection and significant, compassionate love and lovemaking, you want to feel bonded, you want to feel connected. And I have found the best way to do that is not positions and not length and not toys and not, it's how do you treat somebody every day. Foreplay starts the morning before when you're taking out the trash for your spouse, you know. Foreplay starts that morning when you're saying, when you're making your person feel admired and desired, and they're making you feel admired and desired, and you're simply nice to that person. So you know, um, going back to your question, yeah, we can have a lot of these great characteristics, a fancy car, and we have money, we have pecs and great sex, but I don't think those are long-term characteristics that call for a good, close, connecting, long-term relationship.
It's like that online joke, right? The three sixes, 6 inches, 6 feet, and six figures.
Yeah, that'll get you about 6 months. How about that? I'll throw another six in there.
Throw another one in there, right? Yeah, it can only get you so far. And I remember I spoke to a few women about that, and they're like, train, train. No woman on this earth wants some mandingo, right? So like we're small creatures, right? But in a guy's mind, you have to be very tall, very successful, and very well endowed, right? And of course, you got to be going to the gym and be like Arnold and things like that. Do you see a disconnect between people who are trying to um heal their past for a better reality? Like there's a disconnect between how they view the world and maybe how they view themselves in that world?
uh, a disconnect from the world they actually live in.
Yeah, yeah. So for example, their perception of them of the world is totally different than how they view themselves in that world.
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of people live in the land of delusion with who they are. There was a show on many, many years ago, and it was, I don't even know how they found these people because a lot of people don't even talk to their exes, but it was questions. So people would bring like two or three of their exes on these shows, and they would ask questions, and they would ask these exes questions like, why was it that you broke up with this person, or why was it this? And some of the answers they would give, the person that was, the primary contestant on the show would be like, "What? I, I'm that way." So I think, I always say, denial is not just a long river in Egypt. It's a lot of where people live, and you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that they need to do some work because who in the right world wants to walk into fire? But if you force yourself to walk into fire, just like a bunch of mud and coal, you can come up gold. I mean, that's what they do when they coal mine for gold. They get all this dirt and debris and crap, and they put it in this fiery lava thing, and all the dirt and debris rises to the top, and then you kind of swift it away, and then more dirt and debris rises to the top, and you get rid of it, and eventually all that comes up is gold. I believe everybody has the potential to be gold, and they have gold within them, but they got to get all this crap that's attached to them out first. And that's pride, and that's ego, and that's all this other crap.
Could it be that maybe it's a safety and a defense mechanism for people to live in the land of delusion or denial?
Yes, without question, it is. It is, and I'm telling you something. A lot of that comes down to simply self-love, accepting yourself as you are. That's it. I'm going to tell you something. One of the biggest things I try to really help clients is, and I tell them all the time, other people give us pain, we give ourselves suffering. And some of our greatest suffering is believing the lies we were told. And these were not just the lies we were told by others, but the lies we believed that we said to ourselves. For instance, even when we're younger, right? Let's just say we go up to our dad and he's reading the paper or, whatever, and he's just not giving us attention. He's busy, or your mom's cooking, or she's cleaning. You walk away feeling like, geez, I'm a nuisance. I'm a pain in the butt. I'm not worth somebody's time. Well, over time, that's your narrative. I'm not worth somebody's time. So a lot of the ways that we just need to self-correct is to go from scratch, from way back when, and write down all the lies that we believed and start addressing them one by one.
Looking back on your childhood, identifying what is causing you pain and trying to heal it, I can see that being for some people a very difficult task.
A virtually impossible one. And I'm going to tell you, a good way you can start this is writing your younger self a letter. So one of the things that I tell my clients, I'll say, listen, get a regular old sheet of paper. Don't be doing this on the computer and your phone and stuff. I mean, if you have to, and that's your only option, sure. But really, take out a pen and paper, and I'll tell you why in a second. And what you want to do is you want to sit for a moment and you want to allow yourself mentally to go back to that time and space of when you were younger. Now, if that means dim the lights, have a little sea breeze or whatever you drink, and if people have alcoholic problems, do not do that, please. Um, Put on some music and just think of your childhood. Now, if you had a rough childhood, go back to when you kind of didn't feel safe. And this is what people don't like, Terrain. Nobody wants to get lowered into the snake pit. Nobody wants to do that. And that's what you're doing is you're really going back to Nam, or as Rose said in the Titanic. Are you ready to go back to Titanic? So you have to go back to your childhood and say, and I'm telling you something, because you're going to start feeling stuff. You're going to start feeling stuff in your chest and in your stomach and whatever, maybe shortness of breath. And what do we love to do? Man, we are kings and queens at numbing, distracting, avoiding, coping with. No, let me go run and get on the phone and gossip, or let me go cut myself with a razor blade, or let me go have a drink, or let me go get into an affair, or let me. No, sit with the pain. You can't heal it if you don't feel it. So sit with the pain, and then look at that little boy or girl, whoever you are. And it could be when you were 4, it could be when you were 6, it could be when you were 8 to 12, doesn't matter. And start writing your younger self a letter. Now, I'm going to tell you the reason before why I said pen and paper is because, if at all possible, try to really write the letter in your non dominant hand. And the reason being is because we all have filters. We all have filters of the way we like to present to society. When you write with your non dominant hand, your filters haven't been developed yet. So you're really getting real and raw. And you want to start with that, hey, let's hypothetically speaking, it's you. Hey, young Terrain, I see you. I see you playing out in the yard with your trucks, and your face is dirty, but you're still very handsome. I know you don't want to go in the house because, your parents are arguing. Maybe you feel unsafe. But I'm here to tell you, um, I understand what you're going through because I was you, buddy. I was you. And I want to say I'm so sorry I didn't have a voice for you then. I didn't have a voice for you then because I didn't have the tools. And I'm writing to you now to tell you I'm learning the tools, and I will never let you feel the way you feel right now. You and me are going to do this thing called healing. I got and you want to write your younger self, a letter. Now, I'm telling you something, to a lot of people, this could get really deep and emotional. So make sure that you don't really have a lot going on when you're doing it, maybe even the next day, because you can feel zombified, because this is like spending 6 hours in a gym if you allow yourself to get real and raw. And then you take that letter wherever you want it to go, up into who you are now, what have you. And then you keep this letter, and this is going to remind you to keep your promise to do the hard work. So when you talk about, people don't want to face this or face that, that's right. But if they hold themselves accountable for healing that younger, wounded inner child, then they have more motivation to keep doing the work. I'm also a big believer in finding a younger picture of yourself and putting it somewhere, bathroom mirror, in your car, doesn't matter. Every time you walk by it, you can either give it a high five, or you can say, hey, buddy, I still got you. I didn't forget you. I still got you. We're rocking this thing called healing. And then that's where you can also start to write down all the lies that you believed. And then step 4, I usually start having people write down everybody which is actually, I believe, a step in the AA, write down everybody who's ever hurt you. And let's just, talk about. So it's a process, it's a journey. And something, people will be like, I'm not doing any of this. I'm going out to the bar to have a beer. You're going to join me or what? And I don't blame them. It's a lot of work.
So let me ask you, Jay, when you share that, and now with the clients that you work with, what do you find is some of the common struggles that your clients face when you're taking them from point A, which is identifying it, and then point B, which is trying to work through it?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's very tough because a lot of times when people go back to my analogy of going back to Vietnam in the war zone, um, people feel very vulnerable. So I have to make sure somebody's in a good space in order to do this. Because the last thing I'd ever want is this to backfire in some way, shape, or form. So some of the challenges could be, do they have the tools currently to be able to go back to Nam, the war zone? That's number one. And one of the things that I'm really careful of, I give everybody baby steps. Okay, you did this. This is a baby step. Let's do the next thing. Because it could be too much too soon, overwhelm the system. And depending on the person, their lack of tools or coping mechanisms or resources or whatever, you could really find yourself in. I mean, thank the Lord it hasn't happened to me, but I have colleagues that have suggested some shadow work or some childhood work to some clients. And next thing you know, they don't hear from them for months and months and months. And when they do, they went on an alcohol binge or something because it was just too much. So, in my position, you got to be very careful in helping somebody, not hindering them. And with some people, you want to take it very, very slow, the healing process, so they don't make any stupid decisions. But at the same token, then you go slow with the next person, and then they're like, I'm going to drop you as a professional because you're going too slow. So sometimes, it's walking that thin line, but um, it is a process. Listen, I always say we spend 18 years of our life learning all we learn in our home, and then probably the rest of our life trying to unlearn a good majority of it. This is not, a short thing. It's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong journey.
So, Jay, as we close, I want to give you a final question. I'm going to give you three wishes, Aladdin's genie lamp.
Okay.
Okay. What are three things you wish people knew about betrayal and why?
What I wish people knew about betrayal was that they have zero to do with the betrayal. Zero. And I mean zero, because here's the deal. Uh, no matter what, when you're in a relationship, you're going to have relationship issues. You're going to have communication problems. You're going to have infertility problems. You're going to have financial problems. These are all relationship problems. Once somebody makes the decision to leave the relationship to betray, that had nothing to do with you. I don't care if you have one tooth. I don't care if you weigh 650 pounds. I don't care if you bop your spouse upside the head every other Tuesday with a frying pan. There's still options within the relationship. You can talk to a professional. You could leave and get a divorce. You can do it. Once somebody leaves that marital circle, it had nothing to do with you. And so the number one thing I would say is do not personalize it. Do not personalize it. This was their decision because betrayal trauma, that's one of the ways it's different from non-betrayal trauma, is how we personalize it. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I worthy? Well, I'm here to tell you, I have clients that are bank CEOs, that are beautiful models, that are workout buffs, whatever. It's not about how good looking you are, how much money you have. It's not about other. It's about somebody's wounds and weaknesses were more powerful than their coping tools and mechanisms.